Welcome to the second part of the React Native for Designers course. Today I want to teach you some really cool stuff, such as the gestures. You'll be able to detect the pan gesture, such as this, and while doing that, while you're dragging this card, you can see that the background is fading a little bit and the cards are animating in a way that's using the spring animation. It's really nice. On top of that, when you click on the cards, such as this, you can see that it's going to a full screen mode, and then you can click on close and it goes back. And this also works on Android. So now I go to Android and you can see that it does exactly the same thing. On top of that, you can even drop the card and it goes to the next, goes to the next, goes to the next, and it loops through the data so it comes back to the first one. On top of that, we're also going to learn how to create a login experience. So you can see here you click on this person and I can click on logout, and then I'm basically logged out. And now I click here and the login modal comes. And at this point, I'm going to teach you how to have input fields such as this using these GIF animations, as you can see. And we're going to use Firebase data in order to be able to authenticate with Firebase. So if I come back and I use the test account, put test at test.com, and then the password is testing, and I click on login, this is where some of the magic is going to happen. I'm using Lottie animations, which I'm going to show you. So I'm clicking login, and this is a Lottie animation and another Lottie animation, and now I'm logged in, and it pulls some generic data from UI names, so for the avatar and for the name. Now for those who are not familiar with Lottie, you can essentially go to lottiefiles.com and you can find a bunch of animations that are created by a community, and you can use these as animated assets. So you don't need to do this from scratch, and you can just get the JSON file and then connect that to React and be able to use that as a file. This really cool library called Lottie, created by Airbnb, allows you to basically not have to code all these animations from scratch and create really rich animations, as you can see here in After Effects, which a lot of designers use, and just export that as a JSON file using the body moving plugin. Now another thing I want to show you is how to do persisting data. So if I refresh the app like this, you can see that the data persists, and that's using a combination of async storage but also Redux. So this course is pretty jam-packed. You can see that we're dealing with a lot of interactions, even alerts, for example, and loading animations, and really going to take your app to the next level, to a level where you can release this app and really engage your users, learning a lot of cool techniques along the way. That's going to allow you to collaborate better with engineers, use those techniques for prototyping, and of course, launching your very first app. Now, I do want to mention that this course is the second part of the React Native for Designers course, which, if you're not familiar with React Native at all, you should take it before starting this course. Even for those who have more experience with React Native, I think this is a pretty good course because it covers a lot of topics that are not discussed very often, such as gestures, animated transitions, inputs, Lottie animations, loading animations, persistent data, Firebase, and all of these things that I think a lot of people would want to learn. Awesome. So let's get started. First of all, we need to head to the GitHub repo that's called React for Designers. If you haven't started the project yet, you might want to clone this first. And also, it's important to update the assets because we do have new assets. So I'm gonna copy this link, go to terminal, and first go to downloads. And obviously you can skip this part if you already have done the part 1, right? Now do git clone and then the link. This is going to create that project folder, and going to that React Native for Designers. Then I can do npm install, and this is going to install all the missing libraries. Now I can start Expo, so Expo start, and this is going to launch the dev tools into the browser. Now this might take a while, but once it's launched, Now you can run on iOS simulator or Android emulator, and voila, we should have something like this. Now this is where we left off, which means that we have this much done. The cards, the article page, the menu. So we don't have the courses and the project. We do also have some issues which we're gonna fix in this course. Now let's check our code. We're gonna bring this folder into Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to hide this and use as much space as I can, like this. Perfect. So let's go to the assets folder and replace with some new assets. So reveal in Finder. Go here and also open the asset folder that is provided. And I'm just gonna copy and paste right here. Perfect. Now the screen that we want to build is the project screen. But the thing is, it's always, every time it refreshes, it always goes back to the home screen. So what we want to do is to go to the navigator and just change that so that, you know, in the tab navigate.js, we're gonna go to, you know, before the last line, and we just need to put the project stack right before. So I'm gonna copy and put it right here, do my comma, save, and now every time that I refresh, it's going to be on a project screen. Now let's go to the screens folder and go to the project screen. And so the screen that you see here is exactly the code that you see right here. Now before I go further, I do want to explain a little bit about the theme that I'm using and the extensions. So I'm going to go to extensions so you can see that I install a bunch of them, such as Prettier, which is very important. When every time that you save, then it's going to format the code for you. Style components, material theme, but also material theme icons, GraphQL, and Flutter stuff, which is for a future course. There's one more thing that I customize, and that's in the settings. So I'm gonna go to back to my files, close this thing, and then go to settings. In settings, I'm gonna go to parameter, and here I want you to disable the parameter hint. As you might have noticed in the first part of this course, the auto-completion can get a lot in the way, and especially the ones that are more technical are not necessary. And so those ones I prefer to turn them off, but obviously this is optional. Okay, so let's go back to the code. I'm gonna go to the project screen, and you can do Command B to focus on the code. I'm gonna make the code a little bit bigger. And the first thing I want to do here is to have a card so that I can start swiping it. Now for the container, first of all, I'm going to set the background. So background, and I'm going to use this code right here. You can copy and paste from the text content. And now when you save, you can have this background right here. The second thing I want to do is basically create a project component. So I'm gonna go to, Command B, go to components folder, right click right here, new file, and it's gonna be called project.js. This is where I'm gonna create the card. So first of all, import React from React, and then import style component. So style from style components, and then do a class for project, extends react.component, curly braces, render, return, and I can just put a container. The container is going to require, you know, a component styled. So first of all, I'm going to export this to default project and set the container as a style component. So const container is equal to style.view backticks, and set the styling. So the width is going to be 315 pixel, height is gonna be 460. Border radius 14. And background color is going to be, let's say, blue, just for testing. So obviously it's not going to appear yet to the project screen because we haven't included that. So I'm gonna go back to project screen.js and select this text component with a text and replace that with, so let's say, left bracket and project, and just scroll down to this one. It's going to auto import for me like this. So auto import it and then close this and then save. Now I have my card. Cool. So we're doing the gesture now, finally. I'm going to hide this first. And for the project screen, I'm going to import from the React Native library. It's going to be import and then curly braces from React Native. And so when you write this first, when you write between the curly braces, like pan responder, it has auto completion. So it knows that, you know, pan responder is from React Native. So sometimes it's good to write this first. And then after that, I'm gonna also import animated. The next thing is to set the states. Now I need the pan state. So state is equal to curly braces, pan. Now I'm gonna use the animated library so that I can do some animations. It's also easier to work with the pan gesture. So I'm gonna do new animated value, parentheses. And after that, I'm going to component will mount, parentheses, curly braces, and this is where I'm going to set up my pan responder. So this dot underscore pan responder is equal to pan responder, which is from the library, dot create, okay, and then parentheses, curly braces. And now I need to enable the detection of the pan gesture. So what I need is onMove should set pan responder, like this one, and semicolon, parentheses, arrow to true. Now this is just to enable the pan gesture, to sort of listen to it. The second thing we need to do is to add a comma first, and then I'm going to do on pan responder move, okay? And this is going to be animated dot event, parentheses, and I'm gonna set square brackets. First of all, it's gonna be null. Now, if you remember, we used to have animated.timing and we were changing the state. But in this case, this is an event. And what we want to change is the X position and the Y position. So we're going to use curly braces and starting with dx, which is the X position, to this state dot pan dot X, then comma, and then dy this dot state dot pan dot y. Make sure it's exactly like this, and feel free to copy and paste from the code in the text content, because you know some of this is a little bit technical, but we do need this in order to change, you know, to move this card as we drag it. So this is basically setting up the gesture. So we're enabling it, and then when we're moving the card, then we're essentially saying, okay, we have to move this thing, well, the state position of X and Y. And now we just need an animated view that we can wrap around the card, which is called project. I'm gonna go here and then open animated.view and then close, and use the closing animated view to wrap around project like this. And here, we do need the animated view in order to be able to use the animated library, in order to apply those, animated value. So we're gonna do style is equal to double curly braces, and this is where we're gonna apply the transform. And for transform, we have a bunch of transformations such as translate, rotation. In this case, we're gonna use translate Y and translate X. So, you know, for transform, we're gonna use square brackets and then curly braces again, translate X, and then we're gonna apply this state.pan.x, comma after the curly braces, open another one, translate Y, this state.pan.y, and now you can save it. It's gonna give us an error, and that's because we set the animated value to just value, and there's a certain value that we actually need, which is value x, y instead. And so now if you save it, it should be fine. Now, the last thing that we need to do is to apply this pan responder that we declared earlier. So we're gonna apply right after the style. You know, after the double curly braces, we're gonna set curly brace and triple dot this dot pan responder dot pan handlers, and then save. And voila, at this point you can start moving, and you can see that it follows where you drag the little box. Now, I understand that this is a little bit daunting to get started with, but at the same time I do want to point out that this is really powerful stuff, and you can do so many things with it. The next thing we do want to try is, let's say when we release this card, we want it to come back to the original position. So in order to do that, we're going to use another one of these events. So for this one, it's called move. So basically when we're moving, there's another one called release. So that's when we're, we release the click or the tap. So I'm going to add a comma, and then on pan responder, you can see that we have a bunch of them here, and we're going to use the on pan responder release, and then put empty props, arrow, curly braces, and then set the animation. So animated dot spring this dot state dot pan. So we're changing the pan state, comma, curly braces, and set to value of curly braces. We're gonna go back to x0 and then y0. Now I do want to point out that since we're using value xy, which has two values inside it, which is why we're also using curly braces to kind of embed two values, the x and y position. So that's why when we're changing the pan, we're also changing two values at the same time. And finally, don't forget to add the start animation. If I save this and I start dragging my card and I release, it goes back to the original position. That's really cool. In the next section, we're going to learn how to take this further, having multiple cards, for example, and also when you drag this to a certain position, then it's going to drop the card. But for now, what I want to do is to apply some styling here, and this part is totally optional because it's just basic styling, and we're going to apply some data so that we can have multiple cards. So let's head to the project.js, and this is where we're going to set up the structure of this card right here. So I'm going to delete this return and container, start with parentheses, and then I have my container, of course, close it, the cover, and then inside the cover I'm gonna have an image using a source, curly braces, this props.image, which means that we're gonna use the props that's gonna be passed into this component, and then close the image. Also, we're gonna have a title. Inside the title, we're going to use props as well. So this props.title. And then next, we're gonna have the author and it's gonna say by using the props this props dot author. Then after cover, we're gonna have also a text. So the text is going to use this props dot text. Perfect. Now we just need to set the styling. And by the way, you can copy and paste the styling if you don't feel like going through with me, but you know, it could be fun. So we're gonna start with the cover. So const cover is equal to style.view backticks height 290, and by default it's going to use the full width. So I'm gonna go to the next one, and also one of the things that I like to do is just to be able to save all the time, but right now if I save it's gonna give me an error because these components don't exist. So I'm gonna create empty ones first. So const image is equal to style.image and const.title, and this one is going to be a text. Then the author is going to be a text as well. Finally the text, which obviously is going to be a text as well. And voila, so it's good now. And the second thing is, let's work with the data, right? So we're gonna go back to project screen and we're going to inject some props right here. Starting with title is equal to double quotes and then price tag. And obviously you can use any data that you want. For the image, we're gonna use one of the images from the assets folder. Since it's a local image, I'm gonna need to do require and parentheses, double quotes, starting with ... /. So that means that we're going back in, you know, to a parent folder, and then get the assets folder and background 5.jpg. So we have the title and then we have the image. It is showing, it's a little bit big. We're gonna fix that in a style. Then we have the author, Liu Yi, and then the text. And you can just, again, use any text that you want, really. I'm gonna use this one. And voila. So when I do my styling, I really love to work with data and to preview every single step of the way. That's why I'm setting the props first and the structure first, and make sure that, you know, I have empty style components so that it doesn't give me errors. Now back to project.js. For the image component, I'm gonna set the width to 100% and the height to 290. It's starting to look like something, but I just need to put some of these text on top of the image by using position absolute. So for the title, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So position absolute, and I'm gonna start with top 20 pixel and then left 20 pixel. I'm also going to make it bigger. So font size, it's going to be 24. Font weight is going to be bold. The color is going to be white, and I'm also going to set a width so that it kind of it doesn't sort of go and have no padding at the right. So I'm gonna do that with a width of 300. So now I have a nice little title here. Next, we're gonna set the author. So the author is going to have also a position absolute. We're going to position it from the bottom this time. So bottom 20, left 20, and then set the color to slightly transparent by using RGBA. So 255, 255, 255, this is for white, and at 0.8 opacity. And the font size is going to be 15, and the font weight is going to be 600, which is a little bit less than bold. And text transform to uppercase so that we can make everything in uppercase like this. Okay, remember that we had the background to blue, so now we can just set it to white instead. It's gonna look a lot better. And on top of that, I like to have some drop shadow, so let me add some drop shadow. Box shadow, and set the, X position to 0, Y position to 10 pixel, and the spread to 20. And using RGBA because we can use the opacity as well, so 0, 0, 0, that's for black, and then 0.15 for the opacities at 15%. So now we have some really nice drop shadow. So at this point, we just need to set the styling for the text, but also fix some of the round corners here because of the image. So for the text, I'm gonna set the font size to 17, which is a recommended font size for the body text. And I'm also going to set the margin to 20 pixels so that we have some padding. And it's recommended to have, 10 to 20 pixel usually. And the line height, which is really important as well for, especially body text, I'm gonna set it to 24. And of course, you can reference the InVision Studio file that is provided, at part 1 of this course, but also part 2. You can get all the colors that we need for, implementing our design. In this case, I'm just gonna use this one. So this color code right here, and come back and set the color to that color code. And now we have some really nice colors. We just need to fix the rounded corners here. So what we can do is that, remember that we have like the cover here, that is the container for the image. So the image is at the bottom, and then these 2 layers are positioned at absolute. And we can use this container to set the overflow. And so we're gonna go to cover, and we're gonna set the border radius only the top left and the top right. Usually you can set the border radius on the image, but the problem is you cannot be specific about which corner. And the only way to do that is to apply that on the view container that surrounds the image. So we're gonna do exactly that. So border top left radius to 14, and border top right radius to 14. And we're also going to apply overflow hidden. This is like in CSS where you're doing a masking. And now you can see that we have our beautiful rounded corners right here. And that's it. We have not only our gesture, but we have a beautiful UI to play with. And you can obviously customize the data and the UI in whichever way you want. I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this. So like I said, the next part we're gonna go a little bit deeper into gestures and how to play with multiple cards and how to detect the positioning so I can drop the card and go to the next card and loop through the cards. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I hope you'll stick around. I'll see you later.